Guys, thank you so much for attending my talk today. My name is Fabio Liberatore. I am a user experience designer for Officeworks. Hands up if you shop at Officeworks. Cool. Looks like most of the crowd here. I'd be interested to get your thoughts later on about your experience today with Officeworks and how you feel about Officeworks, because get a bit of a mixed emotions. Guys, I wanted to talk about transitioning into UX. Maybe you haven't landed that job in UX yet, you're a fresh graduate, or you're finding it particularly tricky to find a job in UX, or maybe you've just started out. I'm just going to give you some advice and some tips because I've been there myself. I know how difficult it can actually be to find a job, to settle in, to stamp your mark on, get your feet running on the ground. And yeah, hopefully you can sort of take away some valuable advice and some hints and some tips. A little bit about me, very quickly. I noticed that nobody else did this screen, but I did it anyway. So this is just a very brief introduction. I did it last year and I made a passing joke and nobody laughed. So I'm hoping this crowd will be a little bit better this time around. I'm not going to make any jokes. So I told you my name. I told you I work for Officeworks. I didn't tell you that I've got a newborn 1-year-old daughter, Isla. That's her there. It's probably one of my favourite photos where the shark was looking at me very intensely. As you can see, we're both pretty stunned. But I wanted to also give you sort of a bit of a background on where I came from. I started as a graphic designer many years ago and transitioned into UX. Hands up those of you right now that have just started in UX, in roles in UX. No? Hands up those of you who have not yet found a job in UX. Okay, kind of like a 50-50 split at the moment. The good news is, well, first of all, I actually want to reiterate, there was another slide to this. I'm not a recruiter, okay? So everything I say today, I'm not trying to entice you in any way. I'm not trying to sell you something. This is more just feedback, advice, and tips. Take it as you will. But career change and progression is actually quite hard. I get it. We all get it, right? Whatever industry you want to transition into, whatever your background is, wherever you've actually come from. I came from a design background. You may not necessarily have come from a design background. You could have been something else that was totally undesign related. But the good news is that UX is a growing field. Why? Because the way people use websites nowadays, the way that people interact on mobile, it's forever changing. Like I've been in 3 talks today to talk about ChatGPT. Like that's the new thing now, right? So there's always going to be a demand for UX, irrespective, because it's always evolving market. And yeah, basically you always see new roles and specializations emerge, and there's always something new to learn and explore as well. Finding a job in UX. It's a bit of a tricky one. People that say they want to transition into UX is a very broad statement because there are so many different titles that fall under UX. What is it that you want to actually specifically do? Do you want to be a UX designer? Do you want to be a UX researcher? Is there something similar? Do you want to be a content writer? So the term UX designer can actually be quite broad. And I think it's very important to identify where your passion lies within UX, because you may not be that kind of person that wants to put pen to paper and do your sketch designs and prototype designs out. You might have a flair in creative writing and things like that, and there's always a market for that. My advice to you would be when you understand what specific area of UX that you actually want to get into, understand the skills and tools that are required to do that. If you want to prototype designs, learn Figma, learn Adobe, learn Sketch. If you want to learn about, if you think that your passion lies in content writing, there are so many different avenues that you can sort of take to be a better copywriter. And I'll touch on that as we go along in the slides. Gaining experience. Now, this is for those of you who are yet to sort of break into the industry. And again, I'll reiterate, it is very hard. It takes a lot of patience, it does. But one piece of advice I will say is don't give up, because it'll eventually happen. I went through, I couldn't tell you, 8 years ago, probably about 10 different interviews that all fell flat. And at one point I started to sort of question myself, and I was just like, maybe UX isn't for me, but I haven't looked back ever since. There was someone that was willing to give me an opportunity, and I'm loving it now. Like, UX is the best thing for me. So, but there are different ways that you can actually get into UX, and it's gaining that experience. There's internships and entry-level roles. There are freelance projects. So, sorry, I'll start with the first one again. Internship and entry roles, there are heaps out there. There are a lot of companies that are willing to take you on if you're willing to do the hard yards. It may mean that it probably comes at a sacrifice of some sort. Maybe it's unpaid, or it goes into volunteering, which is my third dot point. But there are opportunities there for those who actually really want it. There's freelance projects as well. So this is more about building a diverse portfolio. This is, I guess, particularly important whilst you're looking for work. I found building a portfolio out that you can share with people when you're going through that interview process speaks for itself in tenfold. The fact that you're willing to demonstrate that you're so involved in UX, that you're doing work even though you're not working in UX, is particularly impressive to people that are looking for employees to work in UX. And then there's just volunteer work as well. Again, it's sort of, contributing to community projects. This is all about sort of just getting that hands-on experience. You may not necessarily be working for someone up front, but again, like I said, you're building the foundation to something much bigger. These are some of the roles as you progress through UX as well. You can start, well, you would start at a beginner level, but you can start as an intern. There's a junior designer. You can go to immediate level, which is your UX designer interaction. There's user research. There's senior UX. So, something like UX, when you get into that market and you become a UX designer, you're not limited. It's ongoing. There's always opportunities to advance your career and progression as well. Then there's specialized roles. I don't know what that is, what a UX consultant is. Does anyone know what a UX consultant is? What's a UX consultant?
Just working with different clients.
Okay. Yeah. Ask me why I put that in there. Ask me why I put that in there. No idea. I can copy this one up another slide. So, awesome. This is something I touched on a little bit earlier as well. This is all about sort of filling your head with as much knowledge and opportunity and I guess skill sets to make you equipped for when you get your foot inside the door. It's like brushing up on your research skills, doing things, for example, like brushing up on user interviews and surveys and usability testing. Again, understanding what's the norm out there. What do people use? What are people expecting out of a user interview? What do you do? There's design skills, brush up on your prototyping and wireframing if that's your thing. Technical skills to some extent is pretty good if you want to go down the path of being a developer. A basic understanding of HTML and design software. We've got Adobe and Figma and Sketch. That's not really sort of, I guess, HTML, but again, they form part of that design. And then soft skills as well is a very important one. UX designers communicate a lot. So, having that good communication, empathy, problem solving and collaboration skills are particularly important. You got your hand up? Yeah. Shoot. Yeah.
In technical skills, can we have online website builders? For example, WordPress and Webflow.
The more the merrier. I didn't list them there, but if you've got opportunities to expose yourself to those kind of things, there's always going to be someone out there that would need something like that. And what's even better is if you can if you come to the table at, say, a job interview and say, I know how to use word process, sorry. I've not heard of it. Word process, and all the other applicants have not mentioned that, all of a sudden you're a standout, right? Because you've got that additional skill set. They may not want you to use that, but they look at that and they say, okay, well, this person has additional skills that we might require later on down the track. I'm starting to sound like a recruiter now and a preacher. So it's not my intent. So the reason why I wanted to do this talk today is because I've been doing UX for 10 years and I get a lot of people, Claudia in the front row here, who come up to me and ask me a lot of questions about sort of getting into UX and what does it entail and what are the opportunities and the likes as well. And I thought it'd be probably a bit much better if I can actually do it in an open market. So at the end of this session, I do encourage everyone that if you've got any more questions, please reach out to me. My door is always open. The world needs more UX designers. So if I can help you guys in any way, please reach out to me and I'll be more than happy to answer any questions that you guys might have. This is probably the biggest one that I'll advocate for, which is that strong portfolio. How do you get a portfolio if you're not in the UX world, right? So my advice to you would be build a portfolio. Find a topic and do a use case or a case study on it. This is going to demonstrate to recruiters that you know exactly what you're doing and basically you understand what's expected from you from a UX perspective. Portfolios are particularly good as well. I guess they're a visual representation of a resume. Recruiters don't like to sit there and read resumes from start to finish, especially if they're extremely wordy as well. A picture's worth 1,000 words, right? If you can say to that person, jump on my folio right now, and they can jump on there and they can see that, I guess, your thought process and the way you went about the particular case studies, it talks to your abilities. It talks to your strengths. Yeah, I think that's a really, really sort of, that's probably the most important thing I would recommend if you took nothing else from this talk today. Highlight real world projects, personal work, illustrate your research, ideation, prototyping, and testing, and focus on user-centered projects. So basically, in a nutshell, it's really demonstrating that you understand the UX process, right? Don't build a portfolio with just high-fidelity designs and say, I built this website, I think it's going to do this. Show every step you took to get to that high fidelity. Throw in your sketch design. Say, I did research. I did this. I did user testing and it resulted in this. I've got data that told me this. And this is why I came to this conclusion. Then go into your high fidelity designs. You're demonstrating that you understand the process from start to finish in UX. And that's exactly what they look for. They don't look for pixel pushers. They look for someone that understands UX. How your portfolio helps you? Well, this is just a visual representation of what I just said. The portfolio helps you. It can help you to get a job interview. It can help you to get side projects. People can stumble across your portfolio and hire you on a private basis. But also it makes you stay relevant in your career, which is particularly important as well. With my folio, I started off doing exactly what I just said. I wasn't experienced. I went away and did some case studies and posted them, but now I'm contributing to it as I go along in all the different roles that I've had. So this is what I wanted to touch on. That was a question that was asked a little bit earlier. What are some of the sort of ways that you can sort of learn UX as well? And I'll emphasize the fact that you always need to be learning and continually learning because it is so evolving, UX. Do connect with professionals, LinkedIn, Udemy. There are a number of different social networks out there. I've already had some invitations today. Thank you very much. I'll accept them. That's great. But connecting to these people on social media or through professionals as well gives you an insight into what they're doing and on any given day, especially LinkedIn. LinkedIn I find awesome because, I've connected with UX designers that I may not necessarily talk to on a regular basis, but they often post really cool articles or the stories about what they've done or what they're doing, right? And it gives me ideas on potentially what I can bring back to Officeworks myself. Read books. There's a great book. I'm sure you've probably heard it out there for those of you who've done UX schools. It's called Don't Make Me Think by Stephen Krug. It's a wonderful book, highly recommended. Join UX communities. There's online forums, meetups, conferences. These are usually free. So, and they're actually really, really good. They typically have a guest speaker that will talk. And it's just a really good way of social networking as well. They provide an opportunity to catch up with other UXs afterwards or before and after, and you can sort of talk to, and there's an opportunity to say, hey, I'm looking for work, and with any luck, there might be someone out there that's actually looking for somebody like yourself. I mentioned LinkedIn, and then a mentorship. I've got a mentor. You probably don't have to go to this extreme, but I've got a mentor who's also a UX designer, much more experienced than I am. I don't speak to him as much anymore, but from time to time, we do catch up and see how things are going as well. And he's always sort of giving me handy feedback and tips and on anything. I could go to my mentor and typically say, oh, I've had a really shit project that I'm working on and blah, blah, blah. And he gives me some really good advice that I take on board. Job hunting strategies, tailor your resumes. So highlight relevant skills and projects. Make it, if you're going for a UX job, make your resume a UX resume. Don't go into 5 pages of information about, well, I'm hardworking and I'm dedicated. They already know that. If you're not hardworking, you're not applying for the job, right? Go into the crust of it. Sort of talk about your UX, your skills, your insights, your projects, but more importantly, talk about the benefits that you made to that employer that you worked for, because that's what they're looking for. When somebody looks at your resume, they're looking at your skill set, but they want to know how you can make a difference to them as well. So, a typical example would be, oh, I'm great at prototyping design. Okay, well, we expect that from a UX designer. Versus, I prototyped a new design, which led to a decrease in cart abandonment by 64%. Wow, 64%, that's amazing, right? That's crazy. So this one is more towards sort of like the ChatGPT side of things, which I'm not a big fan of, but it's about using keywords in your resume that typically job tracking systems would look for. So more often than not, when you apply for a UX job, chances are you're not the only person that's applied for that job. There's probably going to be like 100, 150, 200. Don't want to scare you. There's no one out there that's going to sort of sit there and read every resume word for word. They put it through an automated system that checks for keywords, and if it identifies it, it moves you on to the next list. Identify what those keywords are. And I reference ChatGPT because I've done a bit of recruiting myself, and I can tell straight away the difference between someone that's put a bit of passion into writing their resume versus someone that generated one on ChatGPT, and that it just sounds very tech. So, and American spelling as well. So, and leverage job boards as well. There's lots of platforms out there. Indeed, I just said American spelling and I put American spelling in there. Look at that. How silly do I look? Explore platforms like Indeed, Glassdoor, and specialized UX boards. There are so many opportunities, so many avenues. Don't just restrict yourself to a handful. There's a lot of opportunities out there for a lot of forums, a lot of places where there are job boards where people are posting. And this is more sort of for when you actually do the interview as well. Tailor your resume. So highlight, well, I touched on that already, but be ready because they're going to throw grenades at you. They're going to want to know what your design process is, what your UX process is. How do you think? How would you solve this problem? How would you work in this situation? And you have to answer it in a UX perspective as well. So when they fire a grenade at you and say, oh, tell me about a challenge that you faced, you wouldn't sort of say something generic. You'd say, well, I worked on a particular project with stakeholders. Use keywords that they're expecting to hear as well. Don't say, oh, I worked for a couple of people and we designed something and they didn't like the design. No. You talk about it to the nth degree. I worked on a project with multiple stakeholders. It didn't work because we did a round of testing that failed. So we went back to the drawing board. We decided A/B testing. All of a sudden, you're talking the talk, right? And that is a clear example that you're someone that is not in the industry yet, or you're new to the industry, but you know what you're talking about. So it's going to pay in tenfolds. And practice presenting your portfolio as well. I guarantee you they're going to ask you a lot of questions about your portfolio because they're going to look at it before you go into that interview, right? So be prepared to get a barrage of questions about that as well. There are going to be some that are tricky, some that are a lot easier to answer as well. So practice makes perfect. starting your first UX job. This is more for people that have got their foot inside the door at the moment. Familiarize yourself with the company culture and processes. Understand what the company is all about, how they go about doing what they do. Build relationships with team members and stakeholders. I started at Officeworks 3 years ago. Within 2 weeks, we were already going to social events and things like that as team bonding exercises. Now, that in itself is so valuable because it gives you an opportunity to relate and liaise or work with, or not really work, even just socialize with your team members outside of work. So you're not purely confined to sort of talking business during the day. It's more of an opportunity now to learn more about that person on a more personal scale, understand what they do and what they're doing this weekend and things like that. Now, it may not seem like a lot, but making that connection all of a sudden makes you working with that person a lot easier as well, because you're not just seeing them 9 to 5 where all you're doing is talking UX. Continuous learning, seek feedback regularly and stay open to new ideas and techniques. Don't be afraid to say you don't know the answer to something. If they ask you a question you don't know the answer, say you don't know the answer. Because if you say that you do know the answer, then you're going to get yourself in a world of pain, right? Get feedback from your team members as well. I'm going to ask you guys to provide me feedback if I haven't done a very good presentation today. But staying on top of things helps you become better at your role. Stay up to date with UX trends, tools, and methodologies. This is a little bit more tricky. There's always new UX trends out there. Trying to stay on top of it can be very, very tricky because one thing I've learned is different companies go about different ways of UX and the programs that they use and platforms, etc. But if you can equip yourself, again, it's just going to be very advantageous for yourself. Participate in workshops and webinars. Again, this goes back to the UX catch-ups and the social events that take place. Read books. A lot of this stuff is repetitive to what I said earlier. I don't know what's happened here. Expect challenges. Navigating feedback is critical as part of the growth path. So, oh, okay, awesome. And embrace learning opportunities as well. Take advantage, again, I've just reiterated what I said earlier. I don't know what happened there. These are some of the challenges that you're probably going to anticipate will happen. This has been floated around this term a lot. Imposter syndrome, where you've started a new job for the first time, and you're amongst all these senior UX designers that are talking the talk, and you're just sitting there like, what's happening here, right? Don't feel like that at all. Everyone starts somewhere. And like I said, chances are, well, that they have, these senior designers started in the exact same position that you were when they first started themselves. Balancing needs with business goals. So this is more about sort of working outside of the UX team as well. So navigating stakeholder expectations as well. So making sure that you understand the requirements of UX, making sure that you can work to be flexible with your stakeholders, like your product owners and your product managers as well. This comes back to that whole, empathy and communication skills and the likes as well. And expect challenges. This is the conclusion. Finding a job and succeeding in your role does require dedication, networking, and a commitment to continuous learning, but embrace the journey. And remember that every experience is an opportunity to grow. So whether you're starting out for the first time and you haven't got your foot inside the door versus you've just started that role. And don't hesitate to ask the UX community as well. There's always people out there that are more than happy to provide you with feedback. Myself included. So that is it. Thank you. Yeah. Questions? No questions about why did I repeat myself on several slides?
One or two, and then I'm going to send you guys to. Thank you for your talk, and it was
right.
really helpful. And like me as a UX designer looking for a role, it does take many time listening to the same thing again and again, like the sing through.
It does.
And I have a question about, do you know if there's any active UX design communities out there that I can join? Anything on Slack or anything like that? Because I haven't
there's
really found
heaps.
anyone.
There's heaps. There's a lot out there. I probably won't be able to reel them all off in the one go right now, but why don't we connect, and I can certainly provide you a list of certainly the ones that I usually stay in touch with as well. That was one thing I wanted to touch on very quickly that I didn't in my presentation. You talk about interviews and things like that, and I hear people go through tens of interviews where they've just been rejected. It's a really good opportunity to reach out as well. When they say to you, you haven't been successful, don't put your head down. Keep your head up and go to the recruiter and say, okay, that's unfortunate, but you know what? Tell me what I could have done better. Tell me what you think are the right opportunities, what I should be doing to give myself a better chance next interview as well. And I can guarantee you right now, that recruiter or that person that's hiring, that'll sit on top of their mind the next time around when they're looking for somebody. So. Yeah. We'll connect up, and I can send you a link to some of them. Yeah. No, there are tons. There are heaps out there. A post? Sure. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I can do that. Yeah. Any other questions? Yeah. Yeah.
Specialize in any of the UX fields.
You do or you don't, sorry?
If you coming into UX for the first time.
Yeah.
Jumping to a specialized UX design role. Any such advice on that specifically? How you want to specialize on a particular skill?
It's really up to what you sort of want to strive to do in UX design. I mean, you need to make that decision. Where does your passion actually lie? Do you love to sketch? Do you love to research? Do you love to write copy? There are so many different types of roles. As I mentioned there, the first thing I would recommend is that you find what your strong suit is and what you're most passionate about, and then work off that. Thank you.